souls. Oh.
All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Through the gifts of technology, we also gather virtually to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Welcome to all those who are joining us in this way today. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls. Oh, arise.
Good morning. Friends, church, beloved community, I'm Jean Patterson, a member here, and it's so good to see all your faces this morning. And to those of you online, welcome as well. Now, we have the pleasure of recognizing those who are visiting us for the first time. If you are such a person, please raise your hand or stand up and leave it raised because we have a little gift for you. So if you're a first timer, please let us know so we can share with you. Okay, nobody knew, darn. Well, you are welcome here with all of the identities you hold and in your fullness as a person. We hope that you will bring your whole self to this time together. An additional reminder this morning, following the service, we will have our kickoff Yule Box sponsored by the board members across the parking lot at Simpson House. So after the service, please troop across there and join in good times and good food. And members, please make a point of talking to somebody that you don't already know. It'll be good for everybody. Thank you.
In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I await the sun again. I choose love. I choose love. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war,
choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain,
I await the sun again. I choose love.
I choose
Today, we welcome to our pulpit Brother Tai Amri Spann-Ryan. Brother Tai Amri was raised as a Quaker by two educators in New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. He has taught in Montessori schools, public schools, after-school programs, and preschools in Kansas. He attended seminary at Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, where he also took courses at Starr School of Ministry. He was co-pastor of a church in Oakland, California, and was the youth pastor of a church in Manhattan, Kansas. Most recently, he taught in Topeka Middle Schools for the past 6 years, and he is a Universalist whose primary spiritual path is of the African Yoruba tradition of Ifa. Please help me welcome Brother Tai Amri Spann-Ryan to the pulpit.
Thank you, Jean. I didn't expect to see actual students from my preschool when I stepped in here today, but there they are. Hey. So today we are remembering those who have come before us on this World AIDS Day. And I want to begin with the words of an ACT UP activist and ancestor, Bob Rafsky, who said in his speech, "Bury me furiously, when the living no longer speak, the dead speak for them." In the Black community, it is common to pour out the water of life in remembrance of those who have transitioned. Transitioning acknowledges that while they may no longer be with the living, they are not gone. The water connects us. It is an element of cooling and clearing. So please join with heart and spirit as we do this act of pouring out libations. The first pour is to cool and clear our mind so that we can hear the voices of the ancestors. The second pour is to cool and clear the space around us so that the spirit feels welcome. The third pour is to cool and clear our intentions and to fill them with gratitude for clean drinking water and a promise that we will protect the water. The fourth pour is a promise to continue the tradition of honoring our ancestors. To the Queen of the Village, Marsha P. Johnson. To the famous people who died of AIDS and became the faces that woke the masses. Rock Hudson, Freddie Mercury, Eazy-E, Pedro Zamora, Gil Scott-Heron. To the AIDS activists, Joseph Perello, Mark Fisher, Lou Maletta, Ray Navarro, Jesus. Danny Sotomayor, Vito Russo, Doug Gold, Costa Papa, Steve Zabel, Phil Zwickler, Bob Rafsky, Envualada Mbwavi, Abdurazak Zaki Ahmad, Gugu Dlamini, Simon Nkoli, Keith Gann. And if there are any ancestors you would like to honor on this World AIDS Day, please call out their names at this time.
Jason Alejos.
May their names and spirits always be remembered and always dwell with us. Ashe. And now, as we light the chalice, we do so as an act of remembrance and thanksgiving. Please join along with me in response. We are grateful that each of us have been given gifts and talents to create a beloved community. We are grateful for those whose lives we have shared and for those whom we remember this day. We are grateful for the good we have experienced in them and for the blessing they have been to us. May we trust they will be cared for and that the long arm of the universe bends towards justice.
In our fear, we light the chalice in hope.
We all have sorrows. We have known pain. Each of us carries special regrets.
In our heart,
We light the chalice of forgiveness. We are sometimes lonely, and the world seems cold and hard.
in our loneliness, we light our chalice with love.
May our separate lights become one flame, that together we may be nourished by its glow.
Now stand as you are able and join with me in affirming our covenant. Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now remain standing for our first song.
Blessed
So today, for our children's moment, I have a book called Stitch by Stitch, and it is the story of Cleve Jones and the AIDS Memorial Quilt. Piece by piece, stitch by stitch, that's how a quilt is made. Before Cleve Jones was born, his great-grandmother sewed a quilt for him, cutting and pinning together fabric scraps, stitching the pieces together. The quilt welcomed Cleve home as a newborn on October 11th, 1954. Cleve napped with the quilt and felt it tuck around him when he was sick. The quilt warmed him like the love that stitched it together. As Cleve grew older, life wasn't easy for him. Even the warmth of a quilt couldn't help when he was bullied. Then things went from bad to worse. When he was 18, Cleve told his parents he was gay. They didn't approve. As soon as he could, Cleve left home. He'd heard of a place where there might be others like him, a place where he might fit in. San Francisco, California. One by one, person by person, that's how friendships are made. Cleve soon had a patchwork of friends. They were alike and different. The friends were held together by a common thread. They were people on the fringes, on the outside, often without family, searching for acceptance. Action by action, voice by voice, that's how a movement is made. Cleve worked for Harvey Milk. Harvey was an openly gay politician, a leader in San Francisco, a mentor for Cleve. Cleve was there when Harvey was elected to office in 1977. Members of the LGBTQ+ community were being treated unfairly. They weren't given the same rights as others. Harvey, Cleve, and others in the community decided something had to be done. Cleve went to college and started working for equal rights. Little by little, things were changing. Then came the day when Harvey Milk and Mayor George Moscone were assassinated. Cleve and his friends were angry, sad, hurt. Their feelings came rumbling out on the streets. Anger and hatred towards the community began to grow. Progress unraveled right before their eyes. Then things went from bad to worse. Healthy young gay men began to be diagnosed with unusual symptoms. Their illnesses grew worse and worse. Most never got better. Many died. Pieces of the quilt of friendship were lost forever. The illness spread from one city to another, from state to state, from country to country. The disease became a pandemic. Finally, it was given a name, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. Most people didn't seem to care that others were dying, even some doctors, even the United States government. Many people looked down on those with AIDS. Some said they deserved it. Most thought they could never get AIDS themselves. But AIDS continued to spread to every community and throughout the world. Out of the blue, unexpectedly, that's how an idea begins. On November 27th, 1985, Cleve Jones led a candlelight march to remember Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone. Cleve and his friends, Joseph Durant, handed out cardboard and markers. Write down the name of someone you know who died of AIDS, Cleve called. Some people in the crowd wrote initials. Some wrote only a first name. Some wrote nothing. Then a man took 2 pieces of cardboard, taped them together, and wrote his brother's full name in large letters. Soon, others wrote the names of their friends and family members who had died because of AIDS. One by one, the names were taped on the wall of the federal building. Through rain, Cleve looked at the names pieced together on the wall. Suddenly, he had an idea. He would create a symbol, a memorial, a quilt. It took a year and a half for the idea to become a reality. With spray paint and fabric, Cleve and Joseph created the first 2 quilt panels. Others made panels too. Gert McMullen volunteered to sew the panels together. That year, during the Lesbian and Gay Pride Parade, 40 panels were displayed at City Hall in San Francisco. News of the quilt began to spread. Family members and friends began to cut and pin together fabric scraps. They stitched the pieces together, creating 3-foot by 6-foot quilt panels. It was a way to remember, a way to heal, a way to love, a way to do something when it seemed nothing could be done. Slowly, over time, one step at a time, that's how change is made. On October 11th, 1987, Cleve's birthday, squares of stitched-together panels were unfolded and placed on the lawn of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The ground was quilted with names. Each was read aloud. The AIDS memorial quilt toured towns and cities. Then things changed again. People began to discuss AIDS. People with AIDS began to receive help. Money poured in for research. Doctors began to find treatments. The government began taking action. Memory by memory, panel by panel, that's how a memorial was made. Today, the panels on the quilt represent 100,000 names, 100,000 individuals, 100,000 people who will be remembered forever. Cleve called it a monument sewn of fabric and thread. Piece by piece, one by one, action by action, out of the blue, over time, memory by memory. Cleve Jones still has the quilt his great-grandmother made, the quilt he napped with, and that tucked around him when he was sick. It warms him to this day, like the love that stitched it together. Cleve's first quilt inspired another, one with names, a quilt that remembers, a quilt that made a difference. That's how a monument was sewn of fabric and thread.
And now let's sing our children out to their classes.
Good morning, church. Good morning. It is so good to be here today. Oh, my goodness. And that opening song, I Choose Love, was just amazing. I'm Angela Allard. I'm with the Justice Action Network, and we're kind of the social justice arm of this church. And this church chooses love by dedicating one of our offerings each month to an outside organization. And today it's the AIDS Service Foundation. Please be generous with your offering and choose love today. You can put a memo on your check if you're writing a check, or text your donation, And thank you very much for your generosity. And I'd like to introduce Brandon Woodard from the AIDS Service Foundation to tell us a little bit about their work.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's great to be here. I am the new development director for the AIDS Service Foundation, and so this has been a week full of events about celebrating World AIDS Day, but also hearing the conversation. I also am a state representative in the state of Kansas, and so to hear a story about Harvey Milk, it's crazy that just late 70s, we had our first openly LGBT member elected to public office, and nearly 50 years later, there's only 1,000 of us, but we have made progress. So we've seen the same progress happen with the AIDS and HIV epidemic. So at the AIDS Service Foundation, for the last 35 years, we have raised money, raised awareness, and raised hope for the more than 5,700 individuals in the greater Kansas City community who are living or impacted by HIV and AIDS. And so, I think a lot of times folks know about our work with our 3 primary recipients, Hope Care Center, Casey Care Health Center, and Save Inc., working in healthcare space with housing and also palliative care for those that are living with AIDS. And so the work that I think that people know that we do is in that space, but in addition to that, we also have 11 community grant recipients that have requested funds from us this year. And so any of those organizations in the greater Kansas City area that are aligned with our mission of making sure that we are doing everything we can and taking an all-angles approach to ending the HIV and AIDS epidemic is really important. So groups like Transformations, a community organization formed by and for trans women of color. First Call for folks that are experiencing substance misuse disorder and are needing assistance. Anything that we can do to take an all-angles approach to make sure that people are not in sort of a risky situation or in patterns of behavior that would make them more susceptible to HIV transmission. And so you might be thinking, what do your dollars do? Well, one, every single dollar invested in the AIDS Service Foundation stays right here in our community. People talk about United Way. Think of us as the United Way that's focused on ending the HIV and AIDS epidemic. What we know is that there are about 1,000 people in the greater Kansas City area currently living with HIV that do not know their status. And so if we are able to get out there and educate the public and make sure that folks that don't know that they are a part of a community that should be getting tested, which everyone should, we are doing everything we can to make sure, because if we can get those folks tested and on treatment, there are the tools and resources available to us to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And while the history of this and the failure of our government was because folks were ashamed by the mostly gay community that were experiencing HIV infections, today the virus looks much different. Today, 1 in 48 black women in this country are testing positive for HIV through heterosexual contact. In this country, black men who engage in physical contact with men are 6 times more likely to transmit or be infected with HIV. And that number is still 3 times higher than whites for Latino individuals in this country. And so we still have so much more work to do to educate the public about everyone getting tested and ending the stigma. And that's what we do at the AIDS Service Foundation. And so any support that you're able to provide to us allows us to continue doing the work to make sure that we can get out there, educate the public, and stop and finally eradicate the HIV and AIDS epidemic. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for being so welcoming. And thank you for being such an inviting place for all.
Given and gratefully received. And now join me as we dedicate our offering. Let's see if we can remember it. We dedicate our offering to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society. Good job.
Let us now hear the voices of our sisters and brothers who are living with HIV and AIDS. Voice from Myanmar. Although HIV/AIDS has been acknowledged in Myanmar, formerly Burma, since 1990, the statistics are not clear. Government figures put the overall HIV prevalence rate at less than 0.5%, while some non-governmental agencies suggest it's nearer to 2%. In high-risk groups, such as injecting drug users, sex workers, and seafarers, the infection rate may be as high as 40 to 50%. While it's true that in the 1990s, HIV was mainly transmitted by people crossing the border from Thailand, transmission now occurs within Myanmar, particularly in the capital Yangon and in Mandalay. Christian and Buddhist groups are increasingly engaged in HIV prevention and care. For chairman of the Ratana Metta organization in Yangon, it was a natural progression from his previous work on leprosy. He comments, "The leprosy campaign has been very effective and numbers have fallen to 4,000 for the whole country. On the other hand, Myanmar people are quite reserved and are not aware of the effects of HIV. There was no organization among the Buddhists involved in it, so I wanted to set one up. I also believe, from my leprosy work, that HIV-positive people are facing the same problem of discrimination, and we have the strategies to deal with it. We don't feel any religious barriers between different faiths. We are all working for the welfare of humanity. Only the strategy or approach may be different because we're coming from different perspectives."
Voice from Thailand. I am living with my daughter in a rural village in Chiang Mai. The experience that I had been through helped me strengthen and build myself, and I felt that I should be of help to others who are facing pain and suffering. I had an opportunity to join a group of people facing similar situations. We called ourselves Glum Quang Wang Mai, which means New Hope Group. This gave me hope for a better future, hope for better medicine, hope for an opportunity within the community, and many other things. Our group members visited families who had lost hope and helped them find happiness. I wanted to help the community as much as possible. Saying Chang in Chai.
Voice from Indonesia. I had to go to a medical institution to have a general medical checkup, and the results showed that I was HIV positive. I was afraid about social stigma to people living with HIV and AIDS. But one day I met someone who was HIV positive, who gave me support and helped me face the reality of my life. We always share about our power, experience, and hope to deal with the virus. Now I have a community that always supports me and the people living with HIV and AIDS. I am open to talk about my status and speak up at any campaign or meeting on HIV and AIDS, especially with younger people who use drugs with needles. Jinan, 23.
Voices from Myanmar. At first, we weren't brave enough to take on this job, but we realized we had to do something. And slowly, through personal contact with patients, we found we had more compassion and love. Now, we want to do more. It's God's love that keeps us going. When you receive God's love, it has to flow over onto other people. And when you provide education, positive people are able to mix with other people. They no longer feel isolated and alone. Gladys Dive and Pa Lulu, HIV health workers in the Anglican Diocese of Panan.
Please join me in our responsive reading. The words are on the screen. We think of those who have chosen a life of service to end the destruction of HIV and AIDS. In our own wounds, we look for healing so that we can be healers, to help heal our broken word. In unity, hear our attention. For the leaders of the nations and for all faith leaders, give them courage and strength to take lead in working to prevent further spread of HIV and to care for those affected. We say in unity, hear our intention. For young people in their vitality and idealism, bless them with good friends to help them accept themselves in all their vulnerability and challenge them with high ideals. We say in unity, hear our intention. For those who are sick and in pain, especially those affected by HIV/AIDS, may they experience love from each one of us. And may they find meaning and purpose in their lives to inspire others who suffer. We say hear our intention. For all those who work for development and justice, may they not be discouraged as they struggle to create a healthier world. We say in unity, hear our attention. We are grateful for this life which gives us the capacity to create change, and for this world that our needs, our truth, help us to be sensitive to one another and to build healthy and caring communities in our world. We ask for all of our ancestors, in the spirit, those who come after us. May it be so. Amen. Ashe. Aho.
I was bruised bruised and battered. I couldn't tell what I felt. I was unrecognizable to myself. Saw my reflection in a window and didn't know my own face. Oh, brother, are you gonna leave me wasting here away on the streets of Philadelphia? La 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 I walked the avenue till my legs felt like stone. I heard the voices of friends vanished and gone. At night I could hear the blood in my veins, just as black and whispering as the rain on the streets of Philadelphia. La 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 la. Gonna greet me. It's just you and I, my friend. And my clothes don't fit me no more. I walked 1,000 miles just to slip this skin. The night is falling, I'm lying awake. I can feel myself fading away. So receive me, brother, with your faithless kiss, or will we leave each other alone like this on the streets of Philadelphia? La 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 la.
Streets of Philadelphia. What a beautiful tribute. Thank you, Darrington. Thank you. I hope you know how blessed you are with your music. I mean, I've preached in a lot of places, and this is some of the most amazing music I've ever experienced in a service. So thank you so much. Yeah. There aren't a lot of songs that have that kind of power. Few people can tap into that power. But there's another reason I chose that song, and it's because I am what is known as a Jersedelphian. So I was born in New Jersey, 40 minutes from Philly. And when people hear that, they often say to me, "Jersey, you must love Bon Jovi." And I reply, "Yeah, he's all right, but the boss is better." Amen, right? If you remember that film, the film that Streets of Philadelphia comes from, then you might remember solemn stares, contemplation, the lack of intimacy between Tom Hanks and the actor who played his partner, the strange focus on a straight HIV-negative character played by Denzel Washington. In short, you might remember a very Hollywood version of something that seemed like it could be real. Like the real Philly, the real story is far harsher than the film could ever show. Philadelphia was based on white Massachusetts lawyer Jeffrey Bauer and black Philadelphia lawyer Clarence Kane. In the film, Hank's character wins a $5 million lawsuit. In real life, Bauer won $500,000 and Kane won just over $150,000. And this only after they died. They both died in poverty, being cared for by their families. Kane, being the main breadwinner of his entire family, had to move into project housing with his mother caring for him on his deathbed. In the film, Hank's partner, played by Antonio Banderas, does not contract HIV. In real life, a year after his transition, Bauer's partner also succumbed to the virus. The loss of partners, the loss of children, the loss of parents, these are the stories that I sifted through in the making of this sermon. I've been known to inspire the occasional tear in my sermons, but I shed more tears constructing this one than I remember shedding before. I know that not everyone who hears these words might celebrate Christmas as a Christian. My primary spiritual practice involves prayer and study with the African tradition of Ifa. In my household, my wife and I celebrate Hanukkah, solstice, Christmas, and Kwanzaa. But in my past life, I was a Christian pastor, and I find it impossible to write this sermon without talking about the birth and life of Jesus. Studying the history and current situation of the AIDS pandemic, I noticed a rage and despair growing in my heart, and I knew that in order to address that rage and despair, I would have to look for instances of hope. This Sunday, according to the Advent calendar, is the Sunday of hope. So what does hope look like on this World AIDS Day? Well, it's not fairy sprinkles and joy cakes. I mean, I suppose sometimes it is, but sometimes it's also pouring the ashes of your deceased partner on the lawn of the White House until AIDS medicine is made available. Whatever hope or action is, it needs to be led by the communities that are being affected by it. Amen? That's the theme for this year's World AIDS Day. Let communities lead. There's never been a better time for that. Indeed, where we are today with so many HIV and AIDS drugs available is due to the fact that the gay community took the lead on what was originally called the GRID, or gay-related immune deficiency. If that label was a dare to see if the gay community would step up, it definitely worked. In retrospect, it's hard to see how the powers that be could ever have thought that AIDS would ever simply be contained within the gay community. It's hard to see how the powers that be could have thought it would ever be contained simply as a regional epidemic. It's hard to even see the AIDS virus as just a worldwide pandemic. It's hard to see it as anything else but what ACT UP co-founder Larry Kramer called it, a plague. And in retrospect, when watching the gay community stand up to the onslaught of a plague, it's hard to imagine anyone believing that they could ever lose. I suppose that as we near Christmas time, the dominant narrative will continue to push forward the story of consumerism and discounts. I'm not immune to this narrative, but I'm also cognizant of the narrative of the empire that forces the hand of the oppressed. I can think of no better example of this than the negligence and cruelty of an empire that turns a closeted capitalist, Peter Staley, into a calculating strategist in a war for HIV and AIDS positive comrades, smacking down debater Pat Buchanan on CNN's Crossfire. It's a beautiful thing to behold. That turns quiet doctors and biochemists like Dr. Barbara Starr, Iris Lon, Dr. Coulter, Dr. Emilio Amini, and Dr. Ellen Cooper into disseminators of clinical trials and policies. They forced the FDA and CDC to step back and follow their lead. They centered the voices of gay and lesbians in the discussions of clinical trials and fast-tracked access to drugs that saved countless lives. That would never have happened without the teach-ins, the die-ins, the takeovers. This is what happens when the community leads, and it's hard for me to imagine what it must have been like to be at the epicenter of a plague. But there are too many who are still living out these brutal conditions. In 2005, the summer after I graduated from college, I visited Kenya with a group of Black youth from Colorado. It was my first time in the motherland, and I was there as a young adult presence. One of my professors, Malika Pettigrew, organized and led our expedition. This was the year after Wangari Maathai had won a Nobel Peace Prize for her environmental activism, so we wanted to be a part of the tree planting movement. We also planned a trip to the Masai Mara and Lake Nakuru for a safari. But what I was looking forward to most was visiting Nyambani Children's Home, an AIDS orphanage in Nairobi. In Kenya at the time, children who were positive or who had parents who were positive were often abandoned by their guardians. Nyambani was a place where they were to be cared for and loved. What I experienced in Nyambani was a love I have never really gotten over. The children exhibited a joy I'd never seen before. One child in particular took an immediate liking to me. He was perhaps 6 or 7 years old. He walked with our tour group the entire time, giving me the details that our guide would not. He said to me that most children who did not find out their AIDS status before the age 5 did not make it to the age 10. I asked him when he found out his status, and he informed me that he was 6 when he found out he was positive. As the reality of his words sunk in, I realized I was no longer interested in the tour. The only thing I was interested in was bringing as much joy to the life of this child who just told me in very clear terms that he only had a few more years to live. I spent the remainder of my tour playing on every piece of playground equipment at Nyambani. Finally, it was time to go. I walked, still giggling, to the bus when I felt a gentle tug on the back of my head. When I turned around, I saw this boy grinning with one of my dreadlocks grasped in his hand. I looked at him and laughed loudly. I got onto my bus, and as we drove away, I collapsed sobbing and did not stop until I fell asleep that night. I cannot talk about that experience for 2 years. And in fact, this is the first time I have ever spoken of it publicly. This week, as I was preparing for this sermon, I looked up the status of Nyambani's children's home. What I saw caused my heart to drop. Nyambani was founded in 1992 by Father Angelo D'Agostino of the Jesuit order. By all accounts, he seemed to have been a good man with a real concern for Kenyan children, abandoned because of their HIV positive status. But when I read through their website, I noticed that none of their board members were Kenyan. And much more importantly, reading through news reports that came out this week, there were many accusations of a history of extreme sexual abuse at the hands of those who have continued his work. Children with nowhere left to go are now adults with no recourse for justice. It is hard to see this as anything but exploitation, a continuation of the same colonial powers that caused these disparities in the first place, that broke the systems of traditional wisdom in Africa, that seeks to lead a country in hopes of a solution to a situation that benefits only the sick and selfish desires of those in power. There are real Kenyan leaders on the HIV situation in Kenya. Leaders like Cindy Amaze, who started Y Plus Kenya, who holds a degree in microbiology and biotechnology. Leaders like Mbwalva Mbwavi, an HIV positive activist and leader of International Community of Women Living with HIV Kenya chapter, who questioned why more Kenyan girls and women than boys and men were contracting HIV. But these children didn't have these leaders. They stand as a stark reminder of what happens when the community does not lead. ACT UP is such a beautiful reminder and an example of hope. But it is also a clear example of hope that is floated with privilege. The closer you are to a cisgender, wealthy, white male identity, the greater the chances of survival. Meanwhile, according to Dr. Stephen Thrasher, one of the first uses of the detention centers at Guantanamo Bay was the forced sterilization of HIV-positive Haitian refugees. Communities have been trying to and will always try to hold their own. For every in-your-face ACT UP, there is a behind-the-scenes Starr. The behind-the-scenes Starr at the beginning of the modern movement to end AIDS was none other than the Queen of New York's Greenwich Village, Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson, and her consort, Sylvia Rivera. Marsha, the legend, would smile while tossing a brick at the police, arresting Stonewall drag queens and gay men. Sylvia, the force of nature, could rant and scream while rocking a baby to sleep. Together they created Starr, Street Transvestite Action Revolution, where they would house the homeless and the positive, who were often trans people of color, ostracized by everyone, including the gay community. Starr had no seat at the tables of the bigwig pharmacies, but still they saved lives with their passion for life. In the 1990s, while ACT UP was disrupting news coverage and pouring out the ashes of deceased lovers on White House lawns, Marsha P. Johnson's happy and vibrant self was found drowned in the Hudson River. Many believe it was murder, but the police immediately ruled it a suicide and refused to investigate. In the mid-2000s, when ACT UP was demanding physicians take action in the US and Brazil, Sylvia Rivera was having her homeless encampment demolished by the city of New York. Marsha and Sylvia are the leaders we need. They are the patron saints of all those who are called to act up. Not saints in that they were perfect, saints in that they did the miraculous, saved lives as theirs were being hunted and destroyed. This is what it is. It would be beautiful, and I would love a world where the movements of Africa, of the trans community, of the Native community, of the Arab world and Asia looked as dynamic and hopeful as the ACT UP movement and the AIDS quilt. But that is not the world we live in. In the world we live in, hope often looks like a Palestinian baby born in poverty, hiding from empire while he shares his message of love. Like an Afro-Latina trans woman letting a friend sleep on the floor after street walking all night. Like an Indian woman writing a pamphlet that says not all AIDS patients contracted the virus through sex. Sometimes hope looks like letting communities lead while we support their leadership. Ashe. In Black communities like the ones that led the civil rights movement, that brought down AIDS-denying presidents in South Africa, that raised me to never give up hope. When things seem hopeless, we sing a song of hope. We sing and we believe with all that's in us. So I invite you to stand if you are willing and able, to believe if you are willing and able, that we shall overcome if we are willing and able. As we go forth, I ask that in our moments of silence, We listen to the voice of our ancestors. And when we hear their voices, may we be encouraged to act up for justice and change. Ashe.